Hey guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Alan.
Hi. How are you? How are you?
How are you?
Baruch Hashem. It's a hard Masechta, hard. There's a hard Mishnah coming up. A hard.
What?
A hard Mishnah coming up. Hard Mishnah coming up here. Yep.
What, Alan?
Going out with a bang on Yevamos. We got how many more blot to go to finish here? We got 121. We're up to about 40 more blot. 40 blot to finish with Yevamos.
Yeah.
New Perek, Hey Dalid,
Very hard.
84.
Very hard, yeah.
Yesh mutaras lebalan v'asuras liibmein. There are marriages where the husband and wife are allowed to live together, but if the wife falls to one of the brothers' yibum, it would be prohibited. Then there's examples of mutaras liibmein v'asuras lebalan. There are examples where the husband and wife really, they cannot live together, but if she falls to yibum, the brother can live with her. Then there are examples, mutaras le'elu le'elu, where the marriage is fine between the husband and wife, and also no problem if she falls to yibum. Then there are examples, v'asuras le'elu le'elu. We prohibited both for the husband and wife to live together, and when she falls to yibum. And the Mishnah will give us examples of each one. Elu mutaras le'balein v'asuras liibmein. The following, it's permitted to live together as husband and wife, but not to do yibum. Kohen hedyot shenosa salmona. A regular Kohen is allowed to live with an almana. Only a Kohen Gadol can't live with an almana, but a regular Kohen can. So that marriage, that's an example where it's mutter for the Baal, but v'yesh lo ach kohen gadol. One of his brothers is the kohen gadol. So if the brother dies and the woman falls to the kohen gadol can't marry an almana. So it's an example of mutter lebal v'asuras liibmein. Halal shenasa ksheva. You have a halal, for example, a child of a kohen and a grusha. Now his bia of a kohenet, halal can't live with a kosher kohenet. So the excuse me, halal can marry. There's no problem with a halal marrying the kohenet. V'yesh lo ach kosher. Rashi, ach kosher, kohen. The brother's a kohen. Osir liyibman, because shenischala b'bias halal. Once the halal had bia with his wife, it makes her a halala. And then the brother would not be able to marry her to do the yibum. Yisrael shenos lebas Yisrael, v'yesh lo ach mamzer. Right? A Yisrael marries a regular girl. One of his brothers is a mamzer, where the father had relations with an Ashes Ish. So it's a brother. He's a mamzer. So he can be married. The Yisrael can marry his wife. But it's an example of mutter lebal, but also liyibim, because the mamzer can't marry a regular bas Yisrael. Mamzer shenosa mamzeres v'yesh la'ach Yisrael. A mamzer is allowed to marry a mamzeres. So that nesuin is permitted. But then one of the brothers is a regular brother. Yesh la'ach Yisrael. So if he dies and the woman falls to the Yisrael, mamzeres cannot live with the Yisrael. Those are all examples of mutaras lebalen v'asur liibmein. Ve'elu mutaras liibmein v'asur lebalen. The following would be mutter for the ach to be miyabim, but the husband and wife cannot live together. Kohen gadol shekidush es almana. Kohen gadol that gave kiddushin to almana. He's not allowed to do nesuin. He's not allowed to stay married to her. Then if he dies, and the brother's a regular Kohen, and this almana falls to the brother, he's allowed to marry her. He's allowed to do yibum. Yesh la'ach kohen edyon. Kosher shenasa chalala. A male Kohen, or anyone kosher, even a non-Kohen, that marries a chalala, so she's already, v'yesh lo ach chalal. Now, a chalal can live with a chalala. So a kosher Kohen cannot live with a chalala. So that's an example where the husband and wife cannot stay married. But if the husband dies and falls to yibum, to this halal, he would be allowed to do the yibum. Yisrael shenosa mamzeres v'yesh la'ach mamzer. A Yisrael married a mamzeres, which he's not allowed to stay married to her. Bezin would koifin ligarish, because it's a lo yavo mamzer b'kal Hashem. But if the Yisrael dies, one of his brothers is a mamzer, he can do yibum to the mamzeres. Mamzer shenosa bas Yisrael v'yesh la'ach Yisrael. A mamzer marries a bas Yisrael. He's not allowed to stay married to her. And one of his brothers is Yisrael. So if the mamzer dies and the Yisrael falls to the Yisrael, that's permitted. Those are examples of mutaras liibmein v'asur lebalen. Ve'elu asuras le'elu le'elu. The follow would be prohibited to both. Kohen gadol shenosa salmona, v'yesh la'ach kohen gadol, or kohen hedyon. Once the kohen gadol lives with the almana, she becomes a chalala. So a kohen hedyon can't live with a chalala, and of course a kohen gadol can't live with a chalala. Kosher shenosa chalala, right? A kosher kohen can't marry a chalala, so it's usher. V'yesh la'ach kosher also can't live with the chalala if the brother dies and the woman falls liyibu. Yisrael shenosa mamzeres v'yesh la'ach Yisrael. Yisrael marries a female mamzeres, He's not allowed to. He has to divorce her. He dies. She falls to Yibum to the brother who's a Yisrael. Yisrael also can't live with a mamzeres. Mamzer shenosa bas Yisrael. Right, a mamzer lives with a bas Yisrael. He's not allowed to stay married to her. B'yesh loach mamzer. She also can't have Yibum with the brother who's a mamzer. Those are examples of asuras leilu leilu. Ushar kol anoshim mutaras labalem l'mem. All other women, if you marry them, and if the husband dies and falls to Yibum, there's no problem. It's mutter to the husband, mutter to the Yibum. Now, shniyos b'divrei soifrim. What about if the isser is d'Rabbanan, like grandmother, great grandmother, where these are asur midrabbanan shniyos? So shniya lebal v'lo shniya liyavein. The Baal can't stay married to the shniya. But if it's not related to the yavim as a shniya, it's an example of asur lebal muteres liyavim. Shniya liyavim v'lo shniya lebal. If it's a shniya relationship to the yavim, but not to the Baal, asur liyavim muteres lebal. Shniya lezer lezer. There's a shniya relationship both to the Baal and to the yavim. Asur lezer lezer. Now, if you marry a shniya, when you divorce her, ein la lo ksuba, she's not zoicha to get to collect the ksuba, below payros. Normally, if a husband ate payros from nichse malug that the wife brought into the marriage, so he pays it back as part of the at the end of the ksuba. But in this case, he doesn't. This case doesn't go. This case he doesn't know it. Let's see what this is all about here.
Can I help you?
This is Dr. Agatstein.
Oh, hi, Dr. How's it going for Dr. Chama, please? To learn more about these free seminars, check us out on the web at www.
Velo mazonos. She's not entitled to mazonos, velo blos, not her clothing that she brought into the marriage. But the vlad is kosher. There's no mamzeris if you live with the shniyas. However, koifenoi soilohoitzi, Bezdin will force a divorce. Now, the Mishnah ends with almana l'kohen gadol, which you're not allowed to marry. Grusha v'chlutza l'kohen hedyet, which you're not allowed to marry. Mamzeres u'nesin l'Yisrael, bas Yisrael u'nesin l'mamzer, yesh lehem ksuba. Even though these marriages are be'avera, you do get the ksuba. So the Gemara will have to explain why. Now, the Mishnah started off by saying, Kohen hedyot shenasa esa almana. My area de tani nasa. Listen to Kiddush. Why dafka that he actually lived with her? It would work with Kiddushin as well. Because there's already Yibum if he dies, even with Kiddushin. So why dafka nesuin? V'chite metayme de nasa. Maybe the Havale Asay Velo Tasay. Kohen Gadol, there is an Asay that he should marry Basula. And there's a lav of Amana. Now, if he didn't live with her, she would still be a Basula. So Dafka, we want to have a case of Nesuim where when she falls to Yibum, to the Kohen Gadol, there's a violation of an asay and a lo tasay. Aval kidesh, if there was only kiddushin and she was still a psula, there would only be a lav of amona. Well, that shouldn't be a problem. Asi asay, let the asay of yibum come, V'doicha lois aseh, and override the law of almana l'kohen gadol. That's the Gemara's question. Frek the Gemara v'akula pirkin aseh v'los asehu. In all our parak, we had examples. Let's say a mamzer fell. Let's say the girl falls to a brother who's a mamzer. So let the aseh of yibum override the lo taseh of lo yavo mamzer b'kal Hashem. And every case in the whole parak should have been the same thing. V'lo asi aseh v'dachil aseh. Yet in all those cases, we didn't say yibum should be performed. We said there should be chlitza. So the Gemara answers. Now, the Rishonim discuss why is it that the aseh of yibum is not doicha, but these lois asehs. Technically, it does be a rishona, but be a shnia, be a shlisha. If you're going to stay married to them, those would be averis. And therefore, we're goizer the first bia or to the second bia. But anyways, back to the Gemara. Don't darshan the way we're learning. The reason why the Mishnah used the word nesui, nasa, mishum de kavoy lemisni seifa kohen gadol shenasa salmana. There, it has to be a case where he lived with her. Because when a kohen gadol lives with the almana, it makes her a chalala. That's dafka nasa. The shavi chalala, then there'd be a problem with the brother marrying her as well. Because it's one of the examples that was osir lezen, osir lezen. Aval kidesh, in that case, if the kohen gadol had only given kiddushin to the almana, well, unless you live with her, you don't make her a chalala. And therefore, if he died, and then she fell to yibum, would be shayule. The brother would be permitted. So, but we wanted an example where it was prohibited both to the husband and both to the yovim. Tananami reisha nasa. So since the Seifa had to use nasa, the author of the Mishnah, to be stylistically correct, used nasa in the reisha as well. Now, adatani mishum Seifa. You know what? You didn't have to wait until the Seifa. Listen to mishum etziyasa. There was a middle case. Kohen Gadol shekiddush salmana. The Kohen Gadol gave kiddushin and then died. V'yesh lo ach kohen edyoid. So there we said the Kohen Hedyot can marry an almana. Ella mishum bat bukta. Something on the side. The kavila mis the halal shenosa kshera. See, if a halal lives with a kshera, it makes her a halala. But that's only if he lived with her. Time of the nasa, the shavi halala. Aval kidei shayule. But if he only gave her kiddushin, she would be permitted. Mishum achik tani nasa. Now, umay iriyadik tani almana. Listening basula. Why dafka? Why? Once the brother dies, she becomes an almana. Why did she have to be an almana when he married her? You see the question? He could have married a basula, but then when he dies and she falls to ibum, she's an almana. Why did she have to be an almana to start with? The chitem eksover haitan nesuna rishonim mapilin. Perhaps when it comes to yibum, it's not his status at the time of the death of the brother. It's what was her status when the first brother married her. And could be, according to that pshat, if he married a basula, a kohen gadol would be able to live with her because she was a basula initially. Well, we can't learn like that. Hare halal shanasa kshera, right? A halal who marries a kshera. Well, you can't say she was a kshera to be at the beginning, because after the first bia, she's a halala. Lamin in the sunnah rishonim mapili. So havada mishum seifa. It's clearly because of the seifa. What does it say? There, the Kohen Gadol, when he lives with the Amona, makes her a chalola. V'yesh lo ach Kohen Hedyo. So that's dafka only when the suing takes place. He has to have bia with her to make her a chalola. Dafka Amona, aval psula chazyule. If it would be a psula, it would have been royal Kohen Hedyo. Because a regular almana is permitted to a Kohen Hedyon. Mishum hachiktani almana, where the first bia makes her a halal. Maskif l'rav papa. If our analysis is correct, then mitzri sheni shenasa mitzris rishona. Remember, mitzri shlishi is already permitted in Kahal Hashem. However, Rabbi Yochanan said we always follow the mother. So mitzri sheni shenasa mitzris rishona. According to this rule, b'no sheni have it, because we follow the mother, and therefore the child is a sheni. Now, if that's correct, if that sheet of Rabbi Yochanan is correct, then our Mishnah should have listed another case. Listening nami, mitzri sheni. Shenasa shtei mitzriyos. A mitzri sheni marries two types of other mitzriyos. Achas rishon of achas shniya. One was a mitzri rishon, the other was a mitzri sheni. Vayulo banim rishon shniya. And he has sons from both. Now, the son from the rishon is going to be a sheni. The son from the shni is going to be a shlishi, who can marry Klal Yisrael. Inasav kiyorchayu. If these two sons who are brothers marry a mitzri shlishi, can marry a regular bas Yisrael. The sheni can marry a mitzri sheni, who's permitted. That'll be another example of mutaras labale and vasuras libmein. Each one of them could live with their spouses, but if one died and it fell to Yibum, he wouldn't be able to do Yibum, because a Mitzri Shlishi can't marry a Mitzri Sheni. Let's say a Mitzri Shlishi married a Mitzri Shniya, and the Mitzri Sheni married Israelis. Well, those would be examples where you're not allowed to stay married to them. But if they fell to Yibum, the Mitzris could marry each other. That would be Asr Libale and Mutaras Libmein. And another example would be Mutaras Le'elu Giyoirois, right? Any kind of Mitzri can marry a convert, and therefore would be permitted husband and wife and permitted Yibum. Asr Le'elu islandness. And if the Mitzri Sheni married a Yisraelis islandess, so would be also Mishum Yisraelis, and would be other for the brother, because an islandess can't have children, so there's no Yipul. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, why didn't they include this case in our Mishnah? The Gemara answers Tana V'Shayir. You know what? Because the Tana left out certain cases. Now, my shire, the high shire, you got to prove, to use that teretz, you always have to show another example of something that the Tana left out. Well, the Tana left out Psuadaka, right? If one of the brothers was a Psuadaka, be an example where the husband and wife could live together, but if the husband dies and the woman falls to the Psuadaka, the Yibum can't take place. So the Tana left that out. So the Gemara says, nah, imishum Psuadaka lav shiura. That's not something that the Tana left out. The Tana le chayve lavin. It gave us other examples of chayve lavin, like grusha to a kohen or mamzer. So you don't have to include all the lavin. So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Otu chayve lavin milak tani v'adu tani. By the chayve lavin, they also repeated cases. Vaktani Kohen Hedyot Shenas Almana, which is a lav. B'chol Shenas Ksheira, which is also a lav. So you see, they mentioned multiple cases of lavin. So mentioned Psuadaka as well. So that must be an example of Tana V'Shayir. Where it says, no, those cases of the Mishnah that we mentioned was needed for its own chidushim. Female Kohanim can marry a halal according to Rav. Bas Kohen can marry a halal. And to a ger, it's not the same restrictions like on a male Kohen who can't marry a giyoires, can't marry a halala. No. A bas Kohen can marry a halal. Now, she becomes a halala, but there's no lav in her doing it. And that's the psak halacha in the Rambam. Our Mishnah had an example of a halal that married a bas Kohen, and also an example of Yisrael shenosa bas Yisrael, v'yesh lo ach mamzer, which is again repetition of lavin. So the Gemara says, "Hanami lo ma'ader misnehi." That's not really a repetition. Dashmu'in lav, that lav shein shava b'kol, because initially we might have thought the Mishnah only gave us examples of lavim, for example, that only apply to Kohanim. It's not a general lav. Kamashmon lav shava b'kol. It works also with mamzeris, which is a lav that is equal for all Jews. So the Gemara still says, "Haktani Yisrael shenosa mamzeris v'yesh lach Yisrael u'mamzer shenosa mamzer v'yesh lach Yisrael," which seems to be again a repetition of another lav which we don't need. So the Gemara accepts it. El lav shmamina tana v'shayir. So the Tana left things out, left out Tzedakah. And therefore, it left out this other case of Shtei Mitzrios. Shmamina, it's a good proof. Gufa. That, yes, a Kohen as a lav who cannot marry Chalala. A Kohen cannot marry Giyoris. A Kohen cannot marry Neved Meshuchar. But a Bas Kohen can marry all these people. They do not have a lav to marry Chalala, to marry Halal, or a ger. It's only male Kohanim that have that restriction.
How can they say that by the Mitzri case, by the Mitzri, such a far-fetched situation where he'll marry two Mitzrayim? I mean, well, it doesn't even fit into the whole program. It's such an uncommon thing that the Commission would even bring that in.
So the Gemara wanted to use it as proof. The Gemara noted that the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan, that the case of Mitzris always followed the mother. So then the Gemara came up with this case to say, well, if it's true of this din of Rabbi Yochanan, then it should have been listed, even though it's a far-fetched case, but it should have been listed in the Mishnah. So the Gemara wants to knock and say that therefore maybe Rabbi Yochanan's din is not correct. So by proving that the Tana V'Shayir, so it was the Tana left this case out too, and it resurrected the sheet of Rabbi Yochanan. That's exactly what happened in the Gemara. Messiah lay back to the Gemara. Lema Messiah lay. Chalal shenosa ksheira. Says if Chalal married lechatchila a ksheira, a bas kohen, so that seems to prove Rav, my lav kohenes are uyalo. U'may ksheira lekahuna. Lo Yisraelis. It's not a raya that it's referring to a bas kohen. When it says Chalal shenosa ksheira, it refers to a Yisraelis. U'may ksheira lekol. That means a Yisraelis that could marry anybody. What says he? What do you mean? Ihachi? What do you mean? Yeshlo ach kosher nami. That if he had an ach kosher and he died and the wife falls liyibum, so you could tell me that they're also kosher lakal? What do you mean? Mechladu pasul lakal? What? He's otherwise a brother that's pasul? No. So we must be talking about kuhuna and a love kohen. Umedihi kohen, he kohenes. So it seems that our Mishnah is a proof to Rav that a halal can marry lechatchila kohenes. The Gemara says, "Mida area, it's no proof. Ha kedi isa v'ha kedi isa." Each one are independent. Kosher that it says over there is referring to a Kohen, and the kosher over there is referring to Israelis. You don't have to learn it that it's all one. Mostly from Rabbi Bar Nachman. It says, Isha grusha mi isha lo yikachu. And it says twice lo yikachu. Now, why twice? Malamit sha'isha muzeres ayidei aish. These marriages are usher. It's not just a Kohen marrying a halal, but also an Abbas Kohen who should marry, Kohanim Psulim. Amar Rava kol hechaduhu muzer, he muzeres. Rava says if he has an Hazara, then it's usher for her too. The kol hechaduhu lo muzer, he lo mizhara. So, v'hamehacha nafka. I thought we learned that from the Ravina Marav nafka. Ravina Marav v'chein tan Rabbi Shmuel ish o isha ki asumi kol chatosa adam. Man or woman who commit averis. Hishva kos of isha li ish l'cholon shen shebetoira. A man and woman have the same lavim. So the Gemara says, "Ima yavim in lava shava b'kol." That's only lavim that like adultery, but not kohanic lavim. Of a lav shena shava b'kol lo, because it's not shav on anybody, only on kohanim. So maybe that lav is not chal on women. It's not so. Okay.
So what is it, so that the bottom line, can the Kohenis,
Yes.
can marry anybody?
Yes, including a halal,
Yeah, so.
including a ger. All the people that male kohanim can't marry, she can marry.
So we don't, is it now, when it says Kohechadu Muzher, who Muzheris, is that
We're in the middle of this, so that refers to like Arias,
right?
Mamzer,
Uh-huh.
but not the lavim of Kohan, but not the lavim that apply only to Kohanim.
Because the Torah says about a Bas Kohen, that she has much more restrictive thing. If she does things which shame her father, that
Gets sreifa. She gets killed by sreifa.
right. So
And she gets to eat truma. There's a lot of dinim by a Bas Kohen, but Rav Rav, a Bas Kohen can marry a Gioires and a Chalola. The Kach Paskin the Rambam.
Hey, Ernie, Lila Tov.
Shkoyach.
Tomorrow, 8:00.
Tomorrow, 8:00. Aren't you having
Sorry, I didn't realize. Tomorrow's Tuesday. So tomorrow, the daf is 7:30.
All right.
Daf will be 7:30, and the tzorba will be at 8:00.
Get mixed up with all these holidays. A good Chodesh, everybody.